In this third and final part of the series, we will create this custom animated sidebar from scratch with these animated icons and 3D animations. We have already created the other parts of the UI like this bottom tab bar, home screen, onboarding view, and sign-in modal with these input validations. So if you want to learn how we did that, do check out the previous videos. Link will be available in the description. Lastly, as also mentioned in the last video, this app is inspired from this original free SwiftUI plus Rive course by Design Code. So if you want to learn to create the same app in SwiftUI and also how to create your own Rive animations, I would highly recommend you to check out this course. It is completely free and link will be in the description. First, we're going to create the UI for the side menu. So I'm going to create a new file sidemenu.dart inside navigation folder. Now we will create a stateful widget and give it a class name side menu with an empty container. Now in order to see the changes, we will need to add this to the home. So here we're going to wrap the body with the stack widget. Now import the side menu and add it before the tab body. Now till we complete the side menu UI, we can comment the other things for now. Now in side menu, we will add a column as a container child, and for the header, we're going to add a row, which will take a circle of the widget with the icon person outline. Now currently it's behind safe area, so we're going to add some padding of media query at the top that is equal to safe area top height. Now to add some decoration for the side menu, we're going to add a background of value background 2 from our theme.dart file. Next, we're going to limit the width of the sidebar to maximum 288. Now add a border radius of 30. For the avatar, it has some default styling, so we're going to change the background to white with 20% opacity and foreground to white. Next, after this, we're going to add a column and give it a main axis size to minimum so that it only extends based on the content. Next, add the name with some style of color white, font size 17, family enter. Next, the designation, for example, software engineer, with color white of 70%, opacity, font size 15, family enter. Now align the content to the start using cross-axis alignment. Finally, some spacing between the content. And now I'm going to add a padding of 16 for the header. Next is the buttons. So we will first add the title, which is browse, with some styling. Now currently it is by default centered, so we will align it to the left. Now give some padding to the title, say horizontal 24, and a little higher for the top 40 and 8 for the bottom. Now there are going to be multiple buttons with animated icons, so to avoid repetition, I'm going to create a common widget called menu row in components folder. But before this, we need the data for the buttons. So I'm going to create a data file menuitem.dart inside models folder. Here we will create a class menuitem model, and inside this we will first provide some properties for the button like ID, title, and for the animated icon we will require pretty much the same Rive properties as we required for the bottom tab in previous video, state machine and artboard name. So we're going to use the same class here also. Now declare them inside the constructor. Now we will create an array with the data for the button title and icons state machine and artboard name, and repeat the same for the other buttons. Now just be a little careful here, as if you notice for the state machine name, the I of interactivity for home is small and capital for the others. Next, in the menu row file, we will create a stateless widget with class name menu row. Here first we will need the data for the button to show. So we will accept a param of type menu item model that we just created and declare inside constructor as required. Now go back to the side menu and import the menu item widget and declare the buttons array as local variable. We can also use it directly if you want. Next, import menu row widget, and for now we're just going to render a single variable with one of the array item as the data. Now to continue the button UI, first render the Rive icon by providing the asset path, but to see it we will need to give it some fixed size, say 32. Now currently it's just showing the default icon set in the Rive editor. So to render our icons, we will need to provide the state machine and artboard name from the menu data, which in this case is home. Next, we will add the title with some text style. Now we will fade the icon a little bit with opacity. Next, for click event, we will wrap it with Cupertino button and on press callback. Create a local function on menu pressed. Also for the button, we will have some of our own touch effect. So to remove the default ones, we will set the pressed opacity property of the button to 1 and also add some padding for the button and spacing between icon and title. Next, to trigger the icon animation, we need the reference, so we can use onInit callback and create a local function on menu icon init. Now the callback provides us a artboard reference, so we will use that to get a reference for the controller by passing it in from artboard function from state machine controller class from the Rive package, and state machine name as the second param. Now set the controller to the artboard. Now we will get the input reference from the controller by passing the exact name of the input, which is active in this case, and set it to our menu data. And finally typecast it to SMI bool to avoid this lint error. Now we will use this to trigger the icon animation, so on button click, we will change the input status to true, which will play the animation on click. Now it may not be properly visible, but it is currently working. Now it's continuously running, so we will reset to false after 1 second. Now the initial button UI is done, so go back to the side menu file and we will add a divider before the button. Change the color to a little dim, thickness and height to 1 and start and end intent to 16. Next, we will render all the buttons, so add a for loop around the divider and the menu and update the menu param to be dynamic based on the index. Now as you can see, the icon animation on click is working just fine. Now as you know from the UI, this button list section is also repeated. So we're going to create a common stateless widget for the buttons section named menu buttons section. And we will add the complete buttons and the title as the widget UI and have it as common. Now for the data, we will create some params like section title, menu buttons list, and declare them in the constructor. Now replace the title and list with these. Next, we will use this widget and provide the required data, which is same except it's by default centered. So we need to set the alignment. Now for the button, let's give it a little padding. So I'm going to wrap the loop with a container which doesn't accept an array. So we will add the column as a child and provide some margin on the container so that the buttons are perfectly aligned to the title. Now for the second button section, we will go back to the menu item file and create the data for that. And inside side menu, declare that as a local variable. Now we can simply just repeat our widget menu button section with different data, and it will render the buttons, which is also working as expected. Now all the buttons are rendered, but the next thing is to show the active button. So for that, first we will create a state called selected menu with default value of first button, that is home. Now inside menu row of widget, we need to accept current active button as a param so that we can handle the logic here. And we also need to provide the click callback so that it can be updated. Now declare them in the constructor and trigger the pressed callback in the onMenuPressed function. Now go back to the side menu and create the same params for the menu button section widget. But here in the callback, we will return the click button data so the main widget knows about the click button and update the selected menu. Now declare them inside the constructor. Next, pass these as value for the menu row below. Next, use the params where this widget is used. And for the menu press callback, we will create a local function, and using the buttons data we get as a parameter, we will update the selected menu to the new click buttons title. So that will update it whenever we click any button. But currently this is not visible to the end user. So for that we need to update the UI. In the menu row file, wrap the complete UI with the stack widget and add a container before the main content. Now add some decoration. So I'm first gonna add a background color which is not visible. So we need to give it a fixed height by, let's say, 56, which is the estimated height based on the icon size and the padding. Now add some border radius to it, but currently it is visible for all the buttons. And we also need to update the active menu with some animation. So we're first going to update the container with animated container and provide the animation duration. And we're going to animate the width of the background. So based on if selected menu equals to the button's title, it's going to be full width, which is again an estimated value based on the total side menu width and padding of 16. So that'll be 288 minus 16. And if it is not equal, it's going to be 0. As you can see, current active button is favorites. And as we're using animated widget, any change in property, which in this case is width, is automatically going to be animated. Now you can of course tweak with the animation. Like here, it feels a bit slow. So we can use the curve property and provide some of our own custom Bezier configuration to change the feel. So now it feels much better and faster. Finally, as you can also see, it's triggering the button animation for already selected button. So we can avoid that by adding a condition that the button title shouldn't be equal to the current selection, and that will fix it. Now finally, we're going to add the dark mode toggle at the bottom. So for that, we're going to create an entry in the menu item file as the third array and declare that as local variable in the side menu file. Now after the second button section, we will add a row and the button title as the child, some basic text styles. Now before the text, we will add the Rive icon and provide the path to the asset and also import the Rive package at the top. Now give the icon some fixed height so that we can see it. Currently it is the default icon, so we will change that to the one we defined in the data, which is this settings icon. Now add some opacity to dim the icon a little. Now at the end, we're going to add a Cupertino switch for the toggle, and for that we need to import the Cupertino package. And this widget required two mandatory fields, value and on changed. For the value, we will create a new state is dark mode, and for the callback, a local function on theme toggle. And inside this, we will update the state with a new value from the param. Now let's add some padding around and wrap the text with an expanded widget to align the switch to the right and add some spacing before the text. Next, when the dark mode is active, we need to animate the settings icon. So we will get the reference for the Rive icon through onInit callback and do the usual thing we've been doing for all the Rive icons till now. Get the controller's reference through artboard and state machine name and set it to artboard. We get it from the param. Next, get input reference by passing the input name and set it in the data. Now on the theme toggle function, we're going to change the icon status value based on the switch value. So when it is active, the icon is going to be continuously animated and stop when we turn off the switch. Now keep in mind that this dark mode option here is just part of the UI and we're not really going to implement the dark mode functionality as part of this video. But this project is open source, so it can always be added later on. Now lastly, add a spacer before the toggle to align it to the bottom. And we will add media query bottom padding so there's some spacing from screen's bottom. Now our side menu UI is completed. Now to wrap things up, we're going to combine all the UI that we have created till now, like onboarding, sign up modal, home, and this side menu. So first, we're going to uncomment our previously commented code in home. So now we can see the home as that is above the side menu in the stack. So now to open this side menu, we're going to first create a menu button which will use another Rive icon. So render the Rive icon by passing the asset path and import the Rive package. Now we're going to pass the state machine and animation name which are open and close. Currently it is covering the whole screen. So we're going to fix that by providing a fixed size of 44. That will align it to the top left. So we will use the safe area widget to move it inside the screen and add some decoration to the container with some shadow around the icon, border radius to contain this shadow within a circle, and some padding around the icon. Now as usual, we will get the Rive icon reference using onInit callback and create a local function and get controller reference using artboard and state machine name and assign that to the artboard. Now before we get the input reference, we need to detect the click on the icon. So we will use gesture detector here as the icon has its own touch effect And for press callback, we will create a local function. Now for icons input reference, we will create a local variable of type SMI bool, as it is just a boolean type of input, and assign the value by getting input reference from controller and pass the exact name of the input is open and typecast that to SMI bool. Now if you notice that for this icon, when it first rendered, it plays the initial cross animation and then reset to menu icon. So we can instead reverse that by setting the initial input value to true. But to play the animation on click, we need to change the status in the button press callback. Now lastly, as you can see, this button is overlapping with our home UI. So we will add an extra padding of 60 to the top, which kind of is estimated height based on the icon size and padding. Now next, to show the side menu with animation, we need to create an animated controller. Now initialize this in init state with the animation duration, which will be 200 milliseconds. Upper bound, that is 1, means maximum value at which the animation is deemed to be completed. Though it is also the default value, but you can change it to something else if you want. Next, add a vsync param that requires reference to the current class. But it is currently throwing an error. That's because in order to use animation controller, we need to use a mixin call ticker provider state function using this syntax. And now the error is gone. Now finally, we will dispose this animation in dispose callback to avoid any memory leaks. Next, we will create a new animation variable of type double and initialize that in init state using tween with begin and end value and its animate function. Connect this to the animation controller by passing it as parent. And for the curve, you can play with many options available to have different animation feel. But for now, I'm just simply using linear. Now we will wrap the tab body with the animated builder and pass the animation property to the one that we just created, and return the tab body as the child in the builder function. Now to show the side menu, we first need to move the home screen. So we will apply transform translate with horizontal distance of 265. Now it's not working because we first need to trigger the animation on menu click. We will use animate with function here, which requires some params. So we'll create spring simulation variable, which need to be imported from physics package, which also require a few things. So we will create a spring description variable describing few properties for spring animation like mass, stiffness, stamping, and stuff, and pass it in spring is simulation and some basic value for other params. And finally pass that to the animate with function. Now if you try to click the icon, the translation is working. But we also need to handle reverse case in the else using reverse function, and it's working fine. So now let's tweak few things more, like to rotate the view that we can do using 4x4 matrix using matrix 4 class and its transform function, like rotate y here. Inside this we will apply a rotation of 30 degree, but since this function requires it in radians, so we can convert it by multiplying with pi by 180. And make sure to import the math package. Now let's check. But as you can see, it is not working. So to make it work, we need to apply some perspective, and that we can do using set entry function, which basically takes the row, column, and value as the param. Like here, it is third row and second column with a new value 0.001. Now you can of course tweak this value to have different effects, like for 0.002, it's gonna move to more closer. But we're just going to use 0.001 for now. Now this rotation effect, we of course do not want for side menu animation. So we can change the transform alignment to views center to have much better desirable effect. It's much better, but we can see the areas of home properly. So we can add a background to the whole screen by adding a container with a background before the side menu. And that will cover the whole screen. Now finally add some scaling to the home to shrink it down a bit. So here scale value is going to be 1 minus animation value multiplied by 0.1. So that will result in 1 when side menu is closed and 0.9 when it is open. Now it's almost done. Lastly, we will also apply some border radius to the screen. So go back to the home tab view, and here we will wrap the single child scroll view to a container and apply the border radius in the decoration property. But it's now working, and that is because background is applied to the scaffold. So we will instead apply that to the container, but the scaffold still by default contains a white background. So we will change that to transparent, and now it is working. So this side menu animation is almost done, but we will add similar animation to side menu widget too. So wrap it with animated builder and pass animation value. And we will repeat the same thing as we did for home and apply the translate animation here with X translation between 0 and -300. And rotation that is opposite of home rotation. And it's working just fine. But again, we need to change the animation alignment to center. We also can add some fade transition to the side menu as it is visible on the screen, which is pretty simple. Just wrap the side menu widget with fade transition and apply animation as opacity value. That will be between 0 and 1. Now the side menu is completely integrated in home. Finally, we also need to move this menu button as we open side menu. So the same thing, wrap it with animated builder, pass the animation value, move the button part as its child to avoid its recreation on every animation update, and now use it through child panel. And apply the translation on this child of an estimated X transition of 216. And if we refresh and check this, it's working fine. But here's the problem. It's animating just fine, but now I'm not able to click. And that is because of some behavior or issue, you can say, where if you translate gesture detector or some button probably, it won't translate the touch area part. So as a workaround for this, we can instead wrap it with a row and add a sized box before and apply animation to that instead. And that way the animation will work the same as well as the click. Now next, the side menu also requires handling of some other UI elements like bottom tab here. So we're gonna do similar animation for bottom tab and apply Y translation of 300. And it works just as expected. But lastly, as you can see here, dark mode button is still a little extra spaced from the bottom here. And that is because media query bottom padding here is also considering the area of bottom tab as we are rendering it through bottom navigation bar property of scaffold. So we're just gonna subtract the extra 60 padding from the value, and now the side menu part is completed. Now we're gonna integrate the onboarding to home. So we will add an icon of person outline and position it to the right with some fixed size, background, radius and shadow. Now for the animation here, we can't use side menu animation controller. So we're going to create a new one for onboarding and also an animation variable. And same as earlier, initialize an init state callback. The animation value here will be 350 millisecond. And also initialize animation variable, connect to the controller, and finally dispose the controller in the dispose callback. Now import the onboarding, add it to the bottom of the stack, wrap it with a safe area and a container where we will apply some shadow to it and border radius. But it is not showing, so same as we did for home, we will set the scaffold's background to transparent for onboarding and instead apply the white background in the home, which will apply the radius. Now here we want it to feel more like iOS native models but from the top. So here we can ignore safe area for the top by setting it to false. Now next we will translate it a little from the bottom to have some spacing below, which is media query bottom plus 18, keeping in mind devices which doesn't have safe area spacing. Next we can add the property maintain bottom view padding to stretch it to the bottom, avoiding the bottom tab area. Now it's showing by default, but we only want to show it by animation when clicking on the person icon. So first wrap it with animated builder, pass the animation, apply the Y translation in builder function. That will be media query height, which is screen height. But you can see the applied shadow is showing a little at the top. So we can add additional bottom padding to the value. Now finally make it animated by multiplying with 1 minus animation value. That means if animation is active, it will be height multiplied by 0, which will translate it to its original position. And when animation is inactive, it will be minus screen height. Now add gesture detector to the person icon, create a local function called present onboarding, and trigger the onboarding animation controller, which will present the onboarding with animation when clicked. So that's working fine. But we also need some way to close the onboarding and go back to the home. So for that, we can add a close button for onboarding. So inside the widget, we first need to accept a callback when the model is closed and declare it as param. Now we will add the close icon at the top right. So at the same place we add the sign up model, we can add the button, as we are also going to be animating it later on using sign in animation controller. So now add the close icon, position it to the right at a safe area, add some basic styling like size, icon, and background color, radius, shadow, and stuff. And lastly, to detect the touch, wrap it with Cupertino button, import the Cupertino package, and update some default button style. Now on pressed callback, call the close model function that we are getting as widget argument. Now use this callback in home, and here the action for click is to close the model, means reversing the onboarding animation. So we're going to add a param to present onboarding function called show, add a condition, and on else we're going to reverse the animation. Next, in case of user click, it's going to be true, and for this close callback, it's going to be false. And as you can see, it's working just fine. Next, when we open the sign up model, we can also animate the close icon same as we are shifting other content on onboarding UI. So for this, we can just apply animation value to the top property here, which will make the animation here between -80 and 100 when the sign up is open and closed, and it's working fine. And finally, just as we're doing till now, we can add some part of the returned UI in builder function as animated builder child and use the second param child instead. So that we did for close icon here, and it's gonna work the same. Now lastly, at home, we can add an extra condition to hide the onboarding view when it's not visible. So I'm gonna create a new boolean state, show onboarding, which I'm going to set to true when we click on the user icon and false when closing the model, and it's out of the view. And lastly, add an if condition before the onboarding part of the UI, and it's working the same. Now we're going to do some finishing up to sync other parts of the UI with these animations. So first, we're going to for person icon, when the side menu is visible, apply a translation same as we're doing till now using animated builder, and manipulate the right property using animation value. So here range is 16 and -84. And again, for performance perspective, move the unchanged part as animated builder child to avoid recreation on every animation change. Next, animate the bottom tab when onboarding is visible. So here we will add a condition that it will use onboarding animation property when it is visible, else the side menu one. And here we will translate Y to 200, but it's not working, and that is because the animation property in animated builder is only set to sidebar anim. So we also need to change it conditionally based on the required animation, and it's working fine now. Next, we will also scale down the home UI when the onboarding is visible. So go back to its part of the code, and same as we did for bottom tab, make the animation property conditional, and also same for scale, and here it will scale to 0.92, and it's working fine and expected. Next is to add some white underlay for the bottom tab. So we will add an empty container at the end of the stack, provide gradient as the decoration, but here the class giving an error, and that is because it's being imported from two different packages, the Flutter one and the Rive package. And as we don't need it from Rive, we can safely hide it at import. I provide two colors that will be background from our theme.dart file, with first one with 0% opacity. Next, change the begin and end to be top to bottom. Next, keep the container fixed height and align it to the bottom so that it's behind the bottom tab bar. Now this view is blocking our interaction with the UI, so we can avoid that by wrapping it with ignore pointer widget and set ignoring to true. Now again, as we have other UI elements, we need to animate this view also when they are visible. So same, wrap it with animated builder, add conditional animation property and animate the opacity of the second gradient color between 0 to 1. And with this, our application is completed, and the final finishing up is just going to be from a performance perspective. So we're going to wrap some part, mainly the one that we are animating and that are moving a lot on the UI, like side menu, home, onboarding and bottom tab, etc. with repaint boundary. Now I've given some explanation regarding this widget on first part of the video. And if you want to understand it more, there's a detailed video by Fun with Flutter channel. I'll put the link in the description. But just for the summary, it basically tells Flutter to draw this part of the UI as a separate layer, so that any animation or UI shift that shouldn't affect or repaint the other parts of the UI, which can be really useful to improve the animation performance. Now next final thing, as you can see here, the status bar for the dark background of side menu is also dark. So we can programmatically change that by importing services package, add system chrome, set system UI overlay style to dark or light based on the menu status. Now as our application is completed, let's have a go through the whole application. And with this, our 3-part Flutter plus Rive tutorial is completed. I hope you like the tutorials. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.